Welcome to another REACHLaw Deep Dive. Today we're looking closely at a really key part of the REACH regulation, the dossier evaluation process that ECHA manages.
That's right. We've gathered some material covering how ECHA actually reviews the registration dossiers you submit.
And crucially, what your obligations are as a registrant sort of going through this.
Yeah, the mission, if you like, is to unpack the steps ECHA takes and really clarify what companies, maybe like yours, need to know and, importantly, do. It's about understanding both sides.
Right. So let's start with the basics. Why does ECHA even do this dossier evaluation? What's the core purpose?
Fundamentally, it's about making sure registrants provide the necessary information under REACH. This information is, well, vital for assessing risks and protecting human health and the environment.
So it's a check.
It's a critical quality check, really, ensuring the data supporting chemical safety is there and that it's, adequate. They look at quality, completeness, and compliance.
Okay. And the sources indicate there isn't just one way they do this. There are two main kinds of evaluation.
Correct. Two main types. First, there's the compliance check.
Compliance check.
Yeah, this is where ECHA verifies if your dossier meets the specific legal requirements in REACH. Think Annexes 1 and 6 through 10. They also check justifications for adaptations, maybe under Annex 11.
And do they always check the entire dossier in a compliance check?
No, not necessarily. They have
Okay.
flexibility. They might review the whole thing, or they might focus on, say, specific sections or endpoints.
What triggers that focus?
It could be specific concerns they have, maybe about the substance or something in the dossier, or it could just be part of their random selection process, standard procedure sometimes.
Okay. Then the second type.
That's the testing proposal examination. This one's particularly important, especially around animal testing.
Ah, yes.
The goal is twofold, really. Ensure adequate safety data is generated where it's truly needed, but also critically to avoid unnecessary testing, especially on vertebrate animals.
And the key point here is,
ECHA must evaluate every single testing proposal for studies listed in Annexes 9 and 10. These are often the higher tier studies.
and for companies, you have to submit these proposals before doing the tests.
Absolutely. Mandatory. You cannot start Annex 9 or 10 studies until ECHA has evaluated your proposal and issued a formal decision.
And there's public consultation, too.
Yes. If the proposal involves vertebrate testing, ECHA puts it out for public comment. And another point, if you did happen to conduct such tests without a prior proposal after 2008, you'll need a very solid justification during the evaluation.
Right. So when ECHA actually digs into a dossier, what specifically are they scrutinizing? Substance identification seems foundational.
It really is foundational. They check if the substance, its forms, composition, is it all correctly identified? And in a joint submission, your composition has to fit within the agreed boundaries.
You need details on test materials, too.
Sufficient detail, yes. They need to know what was actually tested.
And getting the ID wrong.
Yeah.
That sounds serious.
It can be very serious.
Yeah.
ECHA might contact you informally, first, maybe, but a fundamental error in substance ID. That could mean it's illegally on the market, might need a whole new registration, potentially penalties, too. It's not just a technicality.
Okay. Beyond ID, they're checking against the general information requirements, Annexes 1, 3, 6, 10.
Exactly. For every required endpoint, like toxicity, environmental fate, you name it, you need to provide enough information or a valid reason and adaptation why you haven't. They need to be able to evaluate the risks independently.
Which brings us to those adaptations, justifying why you didn't do a standard test.
Yes, and these justifications get a lot of scrutiny. If you're using, say, read across, weight of evidence, or a category approach.
Can you quickly explain what those are?
Sure. Read across is using data from a similar chemical to predict yours. Weight of evidence is combining different bits of information, maybe some test data, computer modeling, expert judgment to reach a conclusion. Category approach groups, similar substances. The key is, your justification for using any adaptation must follow the rules in Annexes 710 or Annex 11. It has to be scientifically clear, transparent, evidence-based. If it's not robust, ECHA will request the missing standard information.
And back to testing proposals, they always check the need and the scientific design.
Always, especially for vertebrate tests.
Yep.
And worth saying again, no starting Annex 9 or 10 studies before ECHA decides on your proposal.
GLP and test methods are also on the checklist. GLP.
Good laboratory practice. It's a quality system. Ensure studies are reliable, consistent, properly documented. For tox and ecotox tests done after June 1st, 2008, they must follow GLP.
And use official methods?
Yes. New tests should use the official EU or OECD methods and the latest versions ideally.
What about older data that wasn't done under GLP initially?
It might be acceptable, but it's conditional. It has to meet specific criteria from Annex 9 about reliability and relevance, and you need solid justification.
Okay. And finally, for substances at 10 tons per year or more, the CSA and CSR?
Correct. Chemical safety assessment and the resulting chemical safety report. That's Annex 1. And if the substance is hazardous, or PPT, or VPVB,
Persistent bioaccumulative toxic?
or very persistent, very bioaccumulative,
Yes.
then the CSR must include a detailed exposure assessment.
And what's ECHA checking in that CSR?
Consistency, mainly. Does it match the rest of the dossier? And crucially, does it demonstrate that all the identified uses of your substance can be safely managed? The risk assessment, the exposure scenarios they have to show safe use.
All right, so that's ECHA side. Let's flip it. What about the company, the registrant? What are your obligations throughout all this?
Well, the absolute baseline is maintaining dossier compliance. It's a legal duty. Submit a compliant dossier initially, sure, but also keep it updated.
Updates for changes in tonnage band, new uses.
Exactly. Tonnage, uses, new knowledge on properties, changes in composition, revised adaptations, even just contact details. You need to keep it current.
An accurate substance ID is the registrant's job too.
Absolutely. Accurate documentation, consistency with any joint submission, details on test material, and responding promptly if ECHA asks about identity. That's on you.
Providing robust study summaries, justifications for adaptations.
Yes, complete summaries for those Annex 7, 10 endpoints. And justifications for adaptations need to be scientifically sound, showing you've met the requirement another way.
And submitting testing proposals for Annex 910 before testing. Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. And link that to avoiding duplicate animal testing use existing data first, engage in data sharing.
Following GLP, using valid test methods for new studies.
Definitely. Post-2008 tests, GLP is key. Use the official current methods.
And for 10 tons plus, performing the CSA and CSR.
Your obligation. Cover all uses, demonstrate they're safe.
What about joint submissions? Shared responsibility.
It's collective responsibility, yes. All co-registrants are responsible for the data's accuracy and completeness, ensuring it reflects exposure and classification, and coordinating responses to ECHA. Having a shared platform or agreement to manage this is, well, highly recommended.
Okay, so ECHA evaluates, issues a decision, what happens next, response obligations.
First thing, ECHA decisions are legally binding. You must meet the requirements stated for your tonnage band.
And in a joint submission.
Cooperation is key. You have to coordinate actions, share the responsibilities to fulfill what the decision requires.
But you get a chance to comment on draft decisions first.
Yes, affected registrants get 30 days. Best practice, nominate one representative for the joint submission, submit consolidated comments.
Can you include new data then?
If it's genuinely new, relevant data that directly addresses the non-compliance point, yes. But you need to fully reproduce it and explain it clearly in the comments. Extensions on that 30 days are rare, only exceptional cases.
What if you update your dossier during that 30-day comment window? Does ECHA look at that right away?
No, they won't specifically assess dossier updates made during the 30 days. If you do update your dossier in response, you absolutely must mention that fact in your submitted comments.
And if substantial new info comes up after the comment period, like test results,
you need to submit that formally via ECHA's contact form. Fully reproduce the data, justify it, link it to the decision, and follow up with a dossier update. But note, just tweaking your adaptation justifications without new data usually doesn't count as substantial here.
what if a company decides, okay, we're stopping production after getting a draft decision?
You have to record that cessation in REACH-IT. Doing so invalidates your registration. But, and this is important, any adopted decisions issued before you ceased still apply if they relate to obligations from when you were registered. And sometimes member states propose amendments to draft decisions. If that happens, it goes to member state committee. You get another 30 days to comment, but only on the specific amendments. You might even get invited to committee discussions.
And you can appeal and adopt a decision.
Yes, you have the right to appeal to ECHA's Board of Appeal within 3 months. An appeal might suspend the contested parts of the decision while it's ongoing.
If a decision requires a shared test, like an Annex 9 or 10 study,
registrants have 90 days after getting the decision to agree who performs it. If you can't agree and tell ECHA within 90 days, ECHA will designate someone.
and one last check, the non-confidential version before publication.
Right. ECHA sends a draft. You get 21 days to suggest further redactions if needed for confidentiality, but you must provide justification.
Data and cost sharing keeps coming up.
It's central to REACH. Registrants of the same substance must try to agree on sharing costs fairly, transparently, not discriminatorily. You only pay for data relevant to your needs.
And think ahead.
Good agreements should account for potential future requirements, maybe from evaluations like these. Sharing costs for data on similar substances used in adaptations is also encouraged.
So decisions are made, requirements set. What's the final follow-up? Consequences.
After an adopted decision, it's joint responsibility again. Ensure the test gets done if required, and critically submit the updated dossier and CSR by the deadline ECHA set.
And if you miss the deadline or the info isn't good enough,
ECHA evaluates what you submit. If it doesn't meet the decision's requirements, they might issue a new draft decision on non-compliance, or they could notify member state authorities to consider enforcement. And a really crucial warning from the source material. If ECHA's decision explicitly requires a test, trying to submit a scientific adaptation instead at that stage, that's entirely at your own risk. ECHA won't give informal advice or pre-approve alternatives then. The decision stands.
wow. Okay, so this whole process, submission, evaluation, decision, response, follow-up, it's clearly a massive part of REACH compliance and demonstrating chemical safety.
Understanding all these steps, the requirements, the timelines, it's absolutely vital for navigating REACH successfully.
It's definitely a complex landscape. Making sure dossiers are right, responding correctly to ECHA, it takes effort.
And navigating these detailed requirements, well, it often benefits from having expert guidance.
So if you, listening, need support with dossier evaluations, responding to decisions, or meeting these REACH obligations generally, help is available.
REACHLaw specializes in providing support for exactly these kinds of challenges.
You can find out more or get in touch with them directly. Their email is sales@reachlaw.ifi.
It's about making sure you manage the process correctly and meet those obligations effectively.
So reflecting on this deep dive, here's something to think about. REACH clearly pushes to avoid unnecessary animal testing, right, through things like the testing proposal system, but it also demands comprehensive safety data. How does that inherent tension, that balancing act, play out for you as a company trying to comply? It's a constant challenge.
A regulatory dynamic that really pushes the boundaries, both for science and for industry.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.